Hello. North London Derby Day. Oh man, less than an hour away to kick off. What an occasion! I hope everyone is well. Welcome back to AFC Newsday. Matt's here. We thought we'd jump on, do a quick little preview ahead of what promises to be a huge game. We've literally both been so busy. Matt's been, chilling out with his best mate Gilberto Silva. And we just haven't had a chance to jump on a stream until literally just now. So shout out to everyone. Let us know how you're feeling. Comment down below what you think the score's going to be. I guess the team news is something mainly to reflect on as well. So if you're feeling a certain type of way about the team news, then please do comment down below about that. Matt, North London Derby Day. Doesn't get much bigger than this, does it? With what's at stake and, of course, the opposition as well.
As you say, we've not really had a time to process it. It's such a big game, and it's not exactly, you don't exactly want to, have a derby as a must win with 3 games to go in the season. But at the same time, we've won the league there before. This is now a case of just staying in the race, because we know how formidable City are. We know, how important these last few games are, and we could win all our games and still not win the title, and that's the brutal reality of it. But particularly going forward, it's so important we win a game like this, and it's so important that we can go to Spurs, a team who will be absolutely gunning for us and preying on our downfall to a ridiculous degree, particularly the fans, of course, and coming there and triumphing, and even in itself a ground which we've always struggled at, bar last year. So there's a lot of narratives, there's a lot of factors. How are you feeling ahead of it?
Not too bad. Do you know, I'm actually really quite confident from an Arsenal perspective. I can see Arsenal, especially with that team as well. I mean, I'm going to try and do some technicals here. I'm going to try and share the screen, see if this works. Stand by. It's not going to work. Okay, we're not going to share the screen, I'm afraid. But just to talk you through the lineup, obviously Arsenal's lineup is David Raya, Ben White, Saliba, Gabriel, Tomiyasu, Rice, Partey, Odegaard, Saka, Trossard, and Havertz. It's the same team from the Chelsea game. Matt, what are some of the main kind of standouts for you? And also, people watching, please comment down below. Let us know what your thoughts on the team are. Huge game, man. But Matt, talk me through the team. What are your kind of main thoughts on what that team is today?
I think it's a team, who deserve to start. Really, it's a no-brainer team in certain positions. In terms of Tomiyasu, he's always been a bit of a not a clear favourite, so to speak. But even dating back to when we were discussing before the City game about whether it should be Kivior or Tomiyasu, it's always kind of been a case of him being fit. The rest of the back four and the keeper speaks for themselves. The midfield, like Partey came on and looked, obviously played his first game of the season against Chelsea, and that's the midfield which we've not seen at all season. Rice, Partey, and Odegaard, and we play one game with it, and it looks really good. It has a perfect balance, particularly for a derby game like this. And then the front three, Martinelli or Trossard, is your only real, qualm. And to be honest, Trossard, how important he's been. Obviously, the outlet factor of Martinelli, but he has been slightly out of form. And for a game like this, it's a bit of a toss of a coin between the two. But I also like the fact he's rewarded merit with Leo Trossard. I don't know about yourself. I know you're a big advocate for Leo.
Do you know what it is? I think as well recently, it's just how incredibly clutch he is in some of these situations, like how he can score the goal, in that moment when when it counts and when it needs to hit the back of the net, he can score that goal. And that's why I'm such a big fan of Leandro Trossard. I think, yeah, like you said, I think Martinelli's just, I feel for him a little bit, but he can have a big impact to play off the bench. I think either one of them could have started, and either one of them could have had a big impact off the bench. So, man, it's interesting, but I'm really quite happy with that team, I'd say. I think Thomas Partey will have a huge role to play today. I don't know about you, Matt, but what did you make of his performance against Chelsea? Because I think that Thomas Partey will... He looked really good against Chelsea, and I think when he looks good, Arsenal look good.
I think he was good. I think it's one of those cases where his profile was what we have needed big time in terms of... I think for our next midfielder, presuming, obviously we go with someone of that ilk, it's very much a case of having a balance between risk averse and being risky. And Partey's always been a very vertical player, someone who's very forward thinking. So having that balance of him, someone like Rice who can then roam forward without needing to go too crazy with being too vertical, can be a bit safer. And Partey can be the guy who strings the passes. I think, we saw a game like Bayern where it was far more of a pragmatic approach. I want to say, it wasn't overly forward thinking passes. I think someone like Partey is the type of player who would bring that. And I think he will bring that today. Although it is important to just find a balance between not being too risky, not, particularly at a ground like Spurs, early on, just setting the game to our tempo, starting as we mean to go on. And in a nutshell, Partey, he's a very important player for us. Obviously we saw how big he was for us last season, and obviously he's been injured a lot of this season. But a big player for a big game, and at the end of the day, you need your best players fit for a game like this. And both teams, largely, bar Udogie, which is unfortunate for Spurs, he's out for the season with surgery, and I think Pedro Porro has made it in his starting, and then Richarlison I don't think has. But other than that, I think you're looking at pretty much full squads for both sides, and of course, Urin Timber, who decided to
Mm.
wallop one in top bins in midweek. But
What a goal, man! Let's talk about it. I've whacked together a quick little graphic. Today's lineups. That's what we're about here. Quick turnarounds, quick graphics for you to see. These are both teams today. Um, Obviously, there was talk that Urin Timber could make the 11. Well, not the 11. Sorry, the squad. That hasn't happened, but this is both the teams today. Let us know what you think, people. Man, what as looking at Spurs then as well, Matt? Because obviously we could. I mean, let's look at both sides of the story. But looking at Spurs, what are some of the main kind of standouts to you in their lineup? They're doing okay this season, still in that fight for Champions League football. Villa drawing last night probably gave them a bit of a boost and adds an extra kind of incentive for them today. But talk me through the Spurs lineup, Matt. What do you make of that one?
yeah, so I was just getting a tweet out. Yeah, I think that back four and keeper speaks for themselves. Obviously, as I said, Udogie's a massive, massive miss for him. He has been erratic at times. He has made a few errors, but he's a very useful, a very quick player. Someone who did pretty well against Saka, to be fair, when we played at the Emirates, and he's got quite a few assists to his name, I believe. A good, well-rounded fullback at a very young age. So obviously, Davies playing instead is unfortunate for Spurs, but he's a useful squad player for a game like this, so to speak. It is also Saka though. Hopefully, will be licking his lips. Playing against Ben Davies, but equally, I'm sure Spurs aren't stupid. Ange isn't stupid that they will, make sure that Davies doesn't get one-on-one or anything like that. And Spurs midfield, of course, Bissouma. There's been a lot of mixed reaction. He started off brilliantly, got a lot of plaudits, and then it's just not really been it for him. So Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, I just saw a stat now from Sam Dean that they've only won one game when he started, with Sarr and Bissouma are both on the bench as well, which is interesting. Not that that means anything for a derby game like today, but different change of personnel. It seemed like he was going as well to Atletico Madrid or a club in the summer. So interesting how football works. And then, of course, a pretty pacey and balanced front three of Son through the middle, who's obviously caused us our fair share of problems and probably is best through the centre. And Timo Werner, who, has been a useful signing for Spurs. And Kulusevski's a good creative player, but probably more of a central player. So, it's difficult to say. And obviously, it's worth mentioning how front-footed Spurs normally are, how they really try push up, and spaces in behind are pretty key against them. And obviously, we don't really have an outlet. I think Havertz will be good for stretching Spurs' defense, but obviously, no Martinelli means that we don't. It's more ball to feet, but then also Partey kind of negates that. So it's an interesting one. Both lineups are pretty interesting. I think Højbjerg starting is probably the biggest thing, which is not surprising, so to speak, because I don't think Basuma's been great, and I don't think I've heard great things about him. But Sarr being on the bench, and I guess Bentancur was brilliant for them last season. Obviously, had his fair share of injury problems too, but starts in a game like this. And yeah, you got anything to add on the two lineups?
I mean, Spurs. I mean, it's interesting because I saw a video this week that said that Bissouma's going to have a huge role to play against Arsenal, and he's the man that can stop Martin Odegaard, and he's not in the 11 at all. I don't know. It's a fairly I mean, correct me if you think I'm wrong, man, but I think it's a fairly strong Spurs team still. Like
They have
you
they
know,
have a good squad. They do have a good
yeah,
squad.
they're still a solid team. I mean, looking at the Premier League table, they're fifth at the moment in that Europa League spot, 60 points, 7 points behind Aston Villa, 2 wins in their last five. Coming into this game off the back of a defeat. I don't know if you can remind me who they lost to. They
Newcastle
lost.
4-0. Had
Oh,
to
of
sleep on
course.
it for 4 weeks too, which is 2 weeks, sorry, which is
Yeah,
quite.
yeah. So they played. So the last game they played was the 13th of April. So it's been a minute for them. I think I saw on the Sky broadcast as well that the they Arsenal played like 4 times since Spurs last game, something like that, which just kind
Yeah,
of highlights
what
how crazy the
Bayern, uh, Chelsea, and then one other. Crazy. Wolves.
Wolves. Yeah, yeah. It's yeah, for sure. It's such a huge game today, man. Arsenal versus Tottenham. I think how reassuring is it for you, Matt, to see Tomiyasu back in there, because he came in for the Chelsea game, and I think Arsenal's back line when Tomiyasu's playing left back. At one stage, it was like, oh, I don't know if it's Arsenal's best 11, but I just think his ability one on one is just so good, and something that is really missed when he's not in there. And as a defender, he's so something that's always kind of struck me about Tomiyasu is he's for such a big guy, he's so versatile, he's so mobile. Um, so quick, he can change direction quickly for how tall he is. How big do you think it is for him to be back today? And obviously they'll have Kulusevski on that side, won't they?
Yeah, I mean, I think for a game like this, obviously, as I say, you want to have your best team. You want to have the players you feel are most reliable. I don't think it means too much, so to speak, today because Kulusevski isn't someone who's going to, twist you in and out, go down the line, beat you for pace, etc., etc. But obviously, as I say, having your best players, I'm sure they'll try double up on in a fashion, maybe have Madison overlap or Pedro Porro, who's played inverted a lot. I think that'll be interesting from our perspective with Tomiyasu. Against Chelsea, he was pretty forward thinking, he was overlapping a few times, he was coming central a few times. I'd imagine, like playing more like a traditional fullback, but playing in multiple areas. I'd imagine today will be a tiny bit more conservative. But also, I think that Werner side is probably more the one they'll try get at with Son, obviously, too, through the middle. So it's interesting. I think they've very much gone for an approach with a lot of legs, in the middle, really try
Mm,
win that midfield battle and then hit us in transitions, Or I don't think it'll benefit them to be entirely on the front foot. I don't, when you look at the goals we've conceded this season, a good 80% of them are goals which have come from transitions or mistakes or anything like that. So, just our rest defense, even against Bayern Munich, we didn't concede a single goal. Against Brighton, our rest defense, we hardly let them have a shot. So I think it'll be interesting to see how it plays out with two teams who like to be on the front foot. I think, us being more pragmatic probably suits us more, but obviously it's a North London derby. Logic doesn't really seem to matter too much with games like this, and particularly with such fine margins. Obviously, Villa drawing yesterday might give Spurs a tiny bit of optimism for this game, but not that you need more optimism than it being a North London derby and your best chance to ruin your arch rival's chances of winning the Premier League title, or put the nail in the coffin, as we saw with Everton Liverpool midweek. But interesting.
yeah, 100%. And how much do you think, mate, that it's going to be key for Arsenal to maybe get an early goal? Do you know how much do you think that could help Arsenal? Because you saw that Trossard obviously getting an early goal against Chelsea, and that really kind of set the tone for the game. Do you think it could be similar again in this one? Obviously, well, you wouldn't necessarily expect a 5-0, but
I wouldn't mind it.
wouldn't mind it. Yeah, I'm sure you wouldn't. Let us know, by the way, in the comments what you think of the teams if you're watching along live. Um, but yeah, do you think scoring an early goal could be really crucial for this game?
Yeah, definitely. I think, calming the nerves, which I don't know how I'm sure there'll be, some element of obviously the stature of the game. How quickly we start will be interesting. It's been interesting as well because there's been a lot of talk about us burning out recently, but the last two games against Wolves and Chelsea, we've been better in the second half, which I
Hmm.
think is quite intriguing. And Spurs haven't played in the first, oh sorry, they haven't played a game of football in 2 weeks. So no
Yeah,
matter how up for it you are, that's going to have some kind of effect. I don't know how significant, but it's going to have an effect on you in that opening stages of the game. So that could very much be a time for Arsenal to get a goal, stamp their authority, really show to Spurs that, if you're sleepy, we can hit you for a few, and then you've got a mountain to climb. Not that that really ever turns out to be the case, unless if you Cesc Fabregas from within a minute. But
yeah,
hopefully that's Odegaard today.
yeah, 100%. And that game last season at Spurs was the most I've seen Arsenal dominate Tottenham away from home. I think in maybe that I've seen ever. I thought they absolutely, did a number on Tottenham, absolutely dominated them from start to finish. It probably could have been more than a 2-0 win for Arsenal on the day. Um, Man, it'd be so good if Arsenal could have a similar sort of performance. And you've got to think, Matt, that with a midfield of Rice, Partey, and Odegaard, I think Arsenal would dominate the ball and they dominate the possession. I think they'd look a lot more comfortable on the ball, and with that midfield, it just enables them, doesn't it, to have that kind of dominance and put that kind of mark and stamp on a game, doesn't it?
It's really, as I say, it's really interesting to see how it turns out because on one hand, it would be great for us to dominate the ball, but on another hand, I feel like Spurs dominating the ball would maybe benefit us more in terms of Spurs. When they're exposed, when they're really trying to press you up high, is when they're most vulnerable. I would say the same with us, and obviously we saw Chelsea getting behind a few times with directness, which I'm sure Andrew will try to do similar.
Mm.
But it's very interesting to see how this turns out with two teams who want to keep the ball, who want to be forward thinking, who want to dominate the game, but equally two teams who very much both could benefit from allowing the other team to have the ball. Maybe a tiny bit less so Spurs in terms of it's very difficult to score against us. Sustaining pressure. It just speaks for itself. The core we have and how hard it is to score against us in settled play. But I think it very much is in both teams' best interest with transitions, which is why obviously the Martinelli Trossard conundrum is so significant because
Mm.
Martinelli is such a big player for transitions, but also Trossard, I think he'll benefit from being allowed the freedom to come inside, hopefully too. So it's honestly, I couldn't give you an exact answer in terms of how if it's good or not us dominating the ball or who will dominate the ball and what would be best because on paper Spurs are obviously very vulnerable when they have the ball and you can get at them quickly. And our counter pressing as well, we showed in the reverse fixture how good it was.
Yeah,
And we should have scored with that Gabriel Jesus chance, and there were a few other times they got away with it. So I'm sure that will be a key factor, particularly given that they haven't, played in the first 20 minutes. But then I'm sure they'll also be wanting to make a quick start in front of their fans. So it really is a game where logic kind of goes out the window, and it's a very difficult one to call.
yeah, for sure, mate. And I'm just looking at the BBC Sport Live blog, just looking through some of the analysis and previews ahead of the game. You should definitely check it out after you've watched us. Shameless plug. But
Check Southampton's yesterday.
well, yeah, you should do. Maybe, I mean, that's up to you. Maybe after the game, maybe. But just looking, obviously Theo Walcott, he's involved today. I think he's on Five Live, and they're just writing up some of his, quotes throughout the broadcast so far. And he's made the point of saying about Thomas Partey having more gears than Jorginho, which I think is a good point. I think that um, Theo Walcott says, when I watch Jorginho, the thing he's lacking is the recovery and the pace to get back. The way Tottenham can counter with pace, I think Thomas Partey's got more gears than Jorginho. So I think it's an interesting point. I like Jorginho, and I've made a point the other, last week of saying on a stream that I think, his contribution's been epic. And times in the season when Thomas Partey wasn't there, he was able to step in and did a really good job, I thought. Man City at home and a number of games. But I feel like now at this stage in the season, I think if Thomas Partey's fit and with some games under his belt, it's going to be a huge bonus for Arsenal to have him, Matt, isn't it? With the just his upside, and he seemed to have got that kind of rushed out of his system. And I mean, who knows? He could pull up in the first 10 minutes and do his hamstring. History proves it's not impossible. But I mean, what do you think? Do you think Tottenham will counter? Do you think that pace from the likes of Son, Kulusevski, and Timo Werner, fueled by Madison, is something that a game plan they might look to kind of employ on Arsenal tonight?
Yeah, I do. I think, they're quite a similar style to Brighton type of side, trying to play out, um, trying to hit us on transitions. I think they'll have a mix of Brighton and Chelsea being very direct. I do see Maddison trying to play first time passes to Werner or Son and try get at us quickly because, even against Chelsea, we were vulnerable at times defensively, which I don't really see very often. And I think that'll be minimised given the stakes and given it's an away game as well, which by the way, if we keep a clean sheet today, which will be some achievement, presuming we score at least a goal too, then we will have equaled the record for back-to-back or consecutive away clean sheets at 7, which is a monumental achievement when you
Mental.
consider how difficult and such this league is and how difficult away games are as a whole. So that'll be brilliant. But, Partey, as you say, obviously is a massive player. He offers something which we haven't really had, as I say, that forward thinking player. Someone who can give us the option to play like a double pivot esque or allow Rice to go forward without Rice having to do a lot of defensive work at the same time. So it's a nice balance. We did look pretty sharp against Chelsea, but obviously Spurs is a massive one, and as I say, it's very difficult to call. And on paper, it's a very interesting game, for both sides to have areas they can exploit of one another, but it's not on paper. So
You're not wrong, mate. You're not wrong. Just also looking at the BBC Sport Live blog, they're talking. Phil McNulty, excuse me, is saying about how Postecoglou's decision to bring in Pierre-Emile Højbjerg for Yves Bissouma is an interesting one. Højbjerg not had many minutes. Some people say maybe that's Ange putting the handbrake on, maybe being a bit more wary of Arsenal's attacking threat. And, excuse me, they're saying maybe it could be a more kind of pragmatic approach from Spurs in this game. So,
that
um,
lineup does not scream like you want to dominate the ball, or that midfield at
no,
least.
no, it doesn't. No, and another note is obviously Kulusevski is in for Brennan Johnson, who's had he's been finding a bit of form in recent weeks,
I
and
think
Brennan
that could also be
Johnson.
said a bit conservative too. Not conservative because obviously they got the two outlets, but
Mm,
having that balance of having a creator in that front three, just going
yeah,
for someone who will potentially hold the ball a bit longer versus Brennan Johnson who will try get in behind or
yeah.
take on his man. So yeah, sorry, carry on.
No, no problem, mate. No, 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 not at all. But Brennan Johnson is on the bench, and obviously Ben Davies taking the place of the injured Destiny Adogi, who's been really, really good for Spurs this season. He'll be definitely be a bigger loss to them for this game. Arsenal versus Tottenham. It doesn't get any bigger than this. Normally, doesn't get much bigger than just Arsenal versus Tottenham. But the fact the title race is on the line, these final few games. Oh man, Matt, I'm gonna have to ask you for a score prediction. Whilst you think of that, shout out to 550 people that are watching right now. If you are watching, please do comment down below your score prediction for the game. Please follow us at AFC Newsday on Twitter/X, and you can find us on YouTube, AFC Newsday. Any kind of subscription and stuff like that's really appreciated. So thank you for tuning in. Man, it's such an exciting game. It's such a huge game. I'm confident Arsenal can win by a couple. I think maybe I'm going to go 3-1 to the Arsenal.
Um,
I think there'll be goals, and I can see it. Yeah, I can see Arsenal scoring a few. Matt, please give us your verdict, my friend.
I feel like on paper it should be more cagey, but
Yeah,
North London derbies are never cagey. They
no,
always end up being X score all the time. And
mm,
obviously, I think Ange is not stupid. He knows that he can't go completely full blood, against us, particularly given they've not played in 2 weeks, particularly given the stage of the season we're at, particularly given the stature and importance of the game. But he has gone a tiny bit more conservative. I will
mm,
say Arsenal win the game. I think we'll win 2-1. I think it'll be very tough. I think it'll be a tight encounter. I don't see there being that many goals. But as I say, a North London derby never just doesn't have many goals. So everything points towards it not being that many goals. But then North London derbies completely counter that as probably the most entertaining fixture for a neutral and for the fan, depending on who you support on that game. But I'll go for a 2-1 victory for the Arsenal.
2-1 victory, a bit tighter than my prediction. But Matt, thanks for your time, mate. Thanks to everyone tuned in.
Likewise.
Before we go, mate, Gilberto Silva. When can we watch this little overlap esque interview you've done with him. What's been going on there?
Yeah, very exciting stuff. Doing work for Striver as a journalist, so got the amazing opportunity to interview one of the loveliest people, Gilberto Silva, and of course, his pedigree for Arsenal and everything like that very much speaks for itself. But I'd say some point next week, potentially Thursday, maybe a bit later or maybe a bit earlier on, we'll tweet out about it myself. But on Striver's app, it'll most likely be probably in clips as well. So, download Striver if you'd like to, an abuse-free social media app, which it's just a great app, a great incentive, and if you want to get interactions with people like Gilberto Silva, then that's a very exciting way and very good platform. I recommend. I'm not just saying that because I'm involved with them. It's just a great platform. So yeah, amazing
Yeah.
opportunity with Gilberto.
So we're going to get a AFC Newsday X driver kind of partnership going. No, I'll leave it. We'll leave it at that. It'll be
Sponsorship.
great to potentially, Matt. You put the feeders up. We'll see what they say. Did you ask Gilberto on his opinions on the North London derby? Did he give you any opinions on the game?
I think I did ask one question about it, but there was someone else who was, I think, going to ask a lot of Arsenal related questions. I didn't really want
Oh,
to,
okay.
go too much on that. I think I more just said, what will be the difference between, like, what would you say, to Arsenal players? A bit of a sneak peek. What would you say to Arsenal players for, the remaining games, and what will be the actual difference if Arsenal do win the Premier League title and don't win the Premier League title? And I think, went a bit onto Spurs. But yeah,
Great stuff, mate. We'll look forward to it. Obviously at AFC Newsday, we'll make sure to give a little share when Matt does put it out. So follow us at AFC Newsday for that one. But it is the North London derby. Matt's gone 2-1. I've gone 3-1. It's going to be huge. It's going to be massive. Please do subscribe if you are watching. Nearly 600 of you tuned in. We won't be back the other side of the game, unfortunately, but we will be back next week to look ahead to some of the final games in the season. So make sure you subscribe and stick around for that. I will leave the final word to Matt.
just enjoy the game. Hopefully Arsenal can do their business and just appreciate, how good we are as a football team, and hopefully it leads to many trophies in the near future, and hopefully this season.
There you go. That was Matt. I've been Dan. This is FC Newsday. Have a good one, everyone.